You need to get back to work. I'm Karen Stanislaus. I'm Principal Court Attorney to the Honorable James Griffith. I'd like us all to do a moment of silence for Judge Griffith, who lost his father a couple of weeks ago, and today's interment for him. And he couldn't be here, but he sends his love to all of you. So, welcome everyone to 2015's Law Day celebration. I'd like to welcome all the students, judiciary, fellow lawyers and honorees, families, and friends. We are so happy to have you. This is a great celebration of our heritage as lawyers. This is what we look forward to every year, but also throughout the year, not just on Law Day, but always we celebrate the great tradition of our legal profession and our careers. I'd like now for all of us to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Can't flag anywhere. Okay, all right. I see it now. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And now I'd like to welcome Mr. Pat Marthage. He will sing America the Beautiful.
Oh, beautiful for spacious skies, for amber waves of grain, for purple mountain majesties above the fruited plain. America, America, God shed his grace on thee, and crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea. Oh, beautiful for pilgrim feet whose stern impassioned stress a thoroughfare for freedom beat across the wilderness. America, America, God mend thine every flaw. Confirm thy soul in self-control, thy liberty in law.
Thank you so much, Pat, for that wonderful rendition, as he does every year. But I think this was probably the best I've seen, so thank you so very much. And now I'd like to call Pastor Jay Williams to do our prayer.
I am not the rabbi. Let us pray. Friends, we are gathered here today to celebrate Law Day as we do every year. And we do that beginning with a word of thanks. We thank you, God, for being the creator, the one who gave us the basis for law. For all law comes from you originally. We give thanks for our country, a country which is built on the rule of law, so that it is not just the powerful, it is not just the wealthy, it is not just the politically correct and the politically connected who can have their cases heard, but it is we have judges who will make the right decisions which can be the basis for our country. We give thanks today for our lawyers, those people who help our country to be connected in a way in which everyone is under the same rules. And we give thanks today for the students who are here today, that they may grow up to continue the same traditions which we have had for so many years. In all of this we give thanks, and we give thanks for our food today. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you so much, Pastor Williams. We appreciate you coming in. Today we are very honored to have a number of governmental leaders and members of our judiciary. They have taken time from their very busy schedules to share this day with us and with the students. At this time, I'd like to ask all of our elected officials and judges to stand so that we may collectively honor them. Thank you so much. You do such an awesome job on a daily basis to exercise for us the power that people have once they come before the bench. So thank you very much. At this time, I'd like to call our president of the Oneida County Bar Association, Mr. Joseph Geruzzi.
Thank you, Karen. Welcome, friends, Snyder family members, schools, teachers, fellow lawyers, and judges. What I'd like to do first is present the award for the mock trial second place finish to New Hartford High School, who could not be here today, but we'll make sure, I don't see Mr. Ron, who was leading that team here. We'll make sure they get it. And now I'd like to call up the winner of the mock trial competition that they will be going to Albany to argue on the state level. We're very proud of them. Proctor High School.
Cut your heads off, sorry.
We actually won regional, so yeah, that'll be May 18th.
Here, can you move in a little bit?
Thank you, Proctor High School. They're going on to the state.
Congratulations. Congratulations.
And they'll be arguing in the competition on May 18th. And thank you, Michael Kaluza, for your wonderful work this year. At this time in the presentation, I'd like to present the Hugh R Jones Award to Mr. Schneider. And to do that, I would ask that his son John come up and say a few words. Thank you, John.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Honored guests, lawyers, students, thanks for joining us today. It is my pleasure to introduce my father, who is also my best man, Donald Snyder, to receive the Hugh R Jones Award. I know that my father and our entire family is humbled and honored by this tremendous acknowledgement. Like the example that has been set by Judge Jones, Donald Snyder has dedicated his life to helping others through the practice of law and community service. Donald is still a member of the Board of Directors for the Legal Aid Society of Mid-New York and is the past president of the Herkimer County Community College Board of Trustees and the Herkimer County Bar Association. His accomplishments, both personally and professionally, are too many to list here. But most importantly, he has been the best father and husband that any wife or child could ever desire. So please join me in congratulating Donald Snyder, the 2015 recipient of the Hugh R Jones Award.
Thank you. Since 1984, a committee comprised of former presidents of the Oneida County Bar Association has bestowed upon an attorney who has provided outstanding service to the legal profession and our community, and an award which personifies this exemplary service. The award is named for former Court of Appeals Judge Hugh R Jones, who hailed from the Hartford, New York. Don, congratulations. On behalf of the Bar Association, thank you.
It is indeed an honor to receive the Hugh R Jones Award. Special thanks to Mike Getnick for proposing my name for this award, particularly because his personal relationship with Judge Jones. And also my thanks to the past presidents who voted for me to join this very outstanding and distinguished group of recipients. When I arrived at a small law office in downtown West Wingfield in 1966, I thought to myself, this may not last long, but I said, I'll give it 5 years and we'll see what happens. And you can see what's happened, my whole group here. Having lived my entire life in the Capital District, in the Albany area, except for the time in the military service and my trip behind the Iron Curtain to find the difference between capitalism and communism. A great, great experience. However, it didn't take long to be assimilated by a welcoming community. The appreciation of my clients and my fellow attorneys. During the 5 decades that I have practiced the law, it has been an honor and a privilege to work with the many of you here today. I consider myself blessed to have been colleagues with you all and have fine character and professional abilities. Much like in A Tale of Two Cities, I look back on my career and I think it was the best of times and it was the worst of times. There were certainly times when I wondered just why it was that I continued to practice. Too much work, too many green vegetables instead of greenbacks. Then there were those moments when I knew why. I was able to make a real difference in my neighbors' lives, and God had put me here, and I could be of a genuine service to all of them. The Mohawk Valley has been a wonderful place to raise a family and practice law. The apex of my worst times was in January of 2012, when I was diagnosed as having idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis. And the only cure would be a transplant. So I was given a very short life sentence. And but for some reason, even at my advanced age, God saw fit that the Cleveland Clinic changed their policy, and as the second oldest transplant recipient, at age 75, I received the transplant. In September of 2013, my sister-in-law, Betty Ann Miller, died of cancer. And just before her death, she told my wife, "When I see St. Peter, I'm going to tell him that Don has to get his lung." She was a very faithful, faithless person and a very persuasive teacher. And apparently she did see St. Peter and tell him what she thought about. And on October 26th, her birthday, I received my lung. At your place today, you will find a small gift to thank you for being here today. It is a pen that is inscribed with "Donate Life." I ask that you please consider using the pen to sign the back of your driver's license and agreeing to be an organ donor. You can make such a real difference to the lives of so many. In October of 2006, our entire family had the honor of being admitted to the practice of law before the Supreme Court of the United States. My wife is telling me to calm down. And we were the largest family in the history of that court to ever be admitted. After the prompting, it prompted dear Judge John Roberts to ask my wife the question, "Nobody wanted to be a doctor?" Later during the interview with Inside Edition and so many others, my son-in-law, Patrick Quinn, was asked the question, "What do you think of your father-in-law?" And his response was, "Don Snyder is the George Bailey of West Winfield. It's a wonderful life." And you know, without a doubt, it has been just that. Happily, our children are finding the same satisfaction in practicing law, raising their families, and contributing to the life here in the Mohawk Valley. Again, I thank you very much for this awesome award. God bless you all.
Thank you so much, Don. You are so worthy, as are the former recipients of the Hugh R Jones Award. Thank you so much to you and your beautiful family. It is with great pleasure that I introduce our next guest, Mr. Herbert Thorpe. We are honored today to have Herbert Thorpe with us. Mr. Thorpe was born in Brooklyn, New York, but currently is a Rome resident. Mr. Thorpe served in the Civilian Conservation Corps from 1940 to 1942. He enlisted in the Army Reserves in 1942. A year later, he was accepted to the Aviation Cadet School and received his pilot's wings. The Oneida County Bar Association is so proud to present Mr. Herbert Thorpe, a World War II veteran, a former radar research engineer at Griffiths Air Force Base from 1959 to 1982, and a Tuskegee Airman. I present to you Mr. Herbert Thorpe.
Very nice introduction. And I would like to also add my thanks to the United County Bar Association for extending to me the honor and privilege of coming and speaking before you. Thanks to Ms. Yanis, Paul Yanis, for introducing me and giving me the information that I needed to get here and what I needed to be thinking about and doing, especially to the Bar Association and all the members of the association, and more especially to all of the students who are here. I'm going to speak to the students directly in my remarks, and I'm so glad to see them here, so many of them, and following in the footsteps of many of the older members of the bar, and to all of your guests, your families that are here with you. It is indeed an honor and very humbling to be here before this audience. I've been to this auditorium many, many times. I've never been up here. My first time up here. And I am really overcome as to how to approach these remarks. I hope I don't know the time. You put my coattail from an end. Thank you. Thank you very much. I would like to also add my special tribute to one of your past members, I'm sure one of your outstanding past members, Mr. Emlyn Griffith, who I met when our family first came to Rome many years ago, and to his son, Judge Griffith, who has been my friend and our family's friend, and to his family, Mrs. Griffith. I would also like to, at this point, acknowledge the confirmation of Ms. Loretta Lynch as the first African-American woman, United States Attorney General. It is my understanding that the Attorney General is her office are the people who make sure that the laws of the country are followed and abided by. I personally was accepted, as Karen just said to you earlier, as a Tuskegee Aviation Cadet for that program in the fall of 1943. I was in basic training at the time at Kearns Field, a small field near Salt Lake City, with the orders to go to the Tuskegee program. I was given train tickets to travel from Salt Lake City to Biloxi, Mississippi, field, Mississippi. And very interesting, but can you hear me in the back? Okay. A very interesting ride to me because if you look at the map of the United States, Tuskegee, or rather Salt Lake City, is about 2/3 of the way across the country. And Biloxi is in the southern part of the country. And I traveled from Salt Lake City west to California, where for the first time I saw apples growing on trees. And then from there, east toward Biloxi, Mississippi, through the city of New Orleans. The interesting part about that journey was that I was given meal tickets and sleeping car privileges during that whole entire trip until I got to New Orleans. And I was going to travel from New Orleans to Biloxi, which is probably, as I recall, not more than about half an hour by train. And so I presented my ticket to continue on to Biloxi at the ticket counter in New Orleans, and I was refused. In fact, they told me I was in the wrong waiting room. That's my first experience of white and colored waiting rooms. And I eventually continued on my trip to Keesler Field to Biloxi. And that's where the program was set up to screen all of the cadets, both African Americans and white, to screen all of us to see if we were qualified to go on to cadet school. I successfully passed all of those examinations, and I was sent to Tuskegee Institute. Tuskegee Institute, at the time, was a small African-American college instituted during the Reconstruction period following the United States Civil War. And it's in about the middle of the state of Alabama. And it was there that I began my aviation cadet training. In the middle of the program, a group of us was chosen to continue, or rather to enter bombardier navigator training. And so we were sent on to, from Tuskegee, on to Midland, Texas, which I understand is close to the birthplace, the home right now of our past President George W. Bush. We were commissioned after we finished training at Midland Field, and so I was commissioned in December of 1943 as a second lieutenant, U.S. Army Air Corps, and qualified as a crewman on a bomb crew, rather a bomber that would continue the war against the German army in Europe. At that time, the U.S. Army Air Corps, there was no Air Force at the time, no Department of the Air Force, would not integrate air crews. And so we were returned to Tuskegee Army Airfield in Alabama for advanced training as twin-engine pilot, B-25, and I graduated as a twin-engine pilot, B-25, in October of 1945. This was shortly after the war had ended. And those of us who accomplished the feat of having completed both bombardier, navigator, and pilot training were known as triple threat airmen. And at the present time, I am a member of Tuskegee Army Incorporated. It's a national organization of all of those who were involved with the Tuskegee and with the flyers that graduated from Tuskegee Army Airfield. I belong to the Claude P. Govan chapter, which is based in Long Island, New York. Rockville Center is their headquarters. I also, at this point, would like to mention or say to you that my younger brother, Richard, a year younger than myself, also was a Tuskegee Airman and graduated a year before I did. He became a combat fighter pilot and was deployed overseas to Italy. And it was there that he lost his life during a training mission. And this most likely took place at Ramitelli Air Base in Italy, the home of the famous Red Tails. And I'm sure many of you here have seen the Red Tails movie, which was very prominent in helping to destroy the German army machine during World War II. There is much more information about the Tuskegee program and its impact on American society can be found in the CD Tuskegee Airmen and also another CD about the movie Red Tails. There are questions I can attempt to answer them following this. But at this time, I'm going to switch a few of my remarks, and this is in light of our recent African American Month celebration in February, and recent events in Ferguson, Missouri, Staten Island, New York, and now a few days ago in Baltimore, Maryland. I feel it necessary to address these along with the subject, African Americans and the United States judicial system. I'm going to concentrate at the federal level. And the reason I do that is because according to the Carta Africana, federal judges are important, not only because they decide conflicts or cases between individuals and groups in our society, but also because they interpret the Constitution. I'm aware that many of you are familiar with the famous, or to me now infamous, Dred Scott decision prior to the United States Civil War, in which essentially said that Negroes had no rights which white men were bound to respect. And that became the law of the land. So that's the seriousness of having representation at that level. Federal judges are appointed by the president, as many of you know, and must be confirmed by the United States Senate, one of the most powerful legislative bodies in the country. And I'm just going to mention a few of the African Americans who were appointed into the federal judiciary following their appointments by their presidents at the time. Judge William Henry Hastie, he became the first, followed by Judge Herman Moore, appointed in 1939. Judge Hastie was a very important person, or gentleman judge rather, in our federal judicial system. However, he was not appointed to any of the courts within the United States. He was appointed to court in the Virgin Islands, which was at the time of very little significance to the members of the Congress and the United States of America. He retired, but he was eventually reappointed by President Harry Truman to the Circuit Court of Appeals in 1949. The next judge, probably a very little known name, Judge Walter Gordon, also posted to the Virgin Islands. And he became the first federal judge awarded a lifetime appointment. Judges to places like the Virgin Islands were only appointed for a fixed term, and then they had to resign. The next in line, Judge Spotswood Robinson, appointed by President Kennedy, served in the District of Columbia. And he became the first African American to be appointed to a judgeship within the continental United States. Next turn to judges appointed by President Lyndon B. Johnson. Judge Constance Baker Motley, appointed to the Southern District Court of New York, another powerful court within the continental United States. And she served with distinction. Eventually, President Johnson appointed Thurgood Marshall. I'm sure that name is familiar to many. At the time, he was an attorney, the leading attorney for the famous case concerning school desegregation in the United States of America. It was during his term as a judge with as an attorney, the leading attorney with the NAACP, that the United States Supreme Court eventually passed the law which said that segregation is inherently unequal. And that was in 1954. Judge Marshall served until he retired in 1967. Well, he was appointed in 1967, he retired fairly recently. The connection between that and Tuskegee, I'll talk about it in a few minutes. Following Judge Marshall, Judge Robert Collins was appointed, first to be appointed to a state in the Deep South. Primarily, African American judges were appointed to states in the North, courts in the North. He was appointed to the Eastern District of Louisiana by then President Jimmy Carter. President Carter also appointed lawyers and judges to federal courts in 14 other southern states, including border states. No federal judges were appointed by President Reagan. However, the first African-American judges were assigned by him to courts in Virginia and Mississippi. Justice Clarence Thomas, appointed by our first President Bush, became the second African American to sit on the United States Supreme Court. As many of you know, he sits as a staunch conservative on that court and sides in most decisions with the conservative opinions. He now remains as the only African American serving on the United States Supreme Court. And I'd like to also mention one judge that I'm very familiar with, because I knew him as a child, Judge George Yanthus of Rome, New York, who was appointed to the federal court in New York City, Southern District, I believe. So that is our experience with federal judges judiciary judges at the federal level. Although progress has been made in living up to the promises and premises of the Declaration of Independence and the United States Constitution, much remains to be done. In light of what has been happening in the past few days and few months. And since what was once called the Tuskegee experiment, question to everyone: where do we as a society go today from here? And many of you younger people here will go on to become members of our criminal justice system. As many of you, your older friends, families, and so on. But at the present time, our national criminal justice system appears to be broken. I believe there needs to be much more sensitivity to the diversity in our society at all levels. And it must begin with each of us here in this room. I cannot emphasize too much that we all, young and old, need to take a part in addressing and righting some of the wrongs that still exist within our country, especially as far as our criminal justice system is concerned. I thank you very much for your kind attention, and I really feel humble and honored to be here. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Thorpe, for those very insightful words. We're very pleased to have you, and we appreciate all the good work that you do in this community. At this time, I'd like to present to you Assemblyman Anthony J. Brindisi. Mr. Brindisi is here today on Law Day. He's an attorney, and on this day, we are celebrating those within the legal profession who've left a very meaningful impact on our society and certainly locally. We celebrate today a man who grew up surrounded by the legal world. Mr. Anthony J. Brindisi was born and raised in Utica, New York. He studied history at Siena College and received his law degree from Albany Law School. He joined the family business of Brindisi, Murad, Brindisi, and Perlman, but he wanted a little bit more, I think. And he was elected to the State Assembly in a special election in 2011 and was re-elected in 2012 and 2014. The Oneida County Bar Association is so proud to recognize and celebrate the work of this fine gentleman, Attorney Anthony J. Brindisi, the Assemblyman from the 119th Assembly, District 1. He's one of our own. He is unrelenting in his fight to get services locally, and I'm so honored, and we so appreciate the hard work that he has done. Mr. Anthony J. Brindisi.
Good afternoon. Can everyone hear me okay? Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, I first want to start off by thanking the Oneida County Bar Association for the opportunity to speak to all of you on Law Day, when we celebrate the rule of law and its contributions to the freedoms we enjoy as Americans. I also want to thank the officers and members of the Oneida County Bar Association for all that you do to promote understanding within our legal system. Whether it's capably manning the legal advice hotlines or educating students about the importance of the judicial system, thank you for your efforts. I want to congratulate Donald Snyder on being the recipient of this year's Hugh R Jones Award. Your record of service is commendable and inspiring. And thank you to one of the Mohawk Valley's true heroes, Herbert Thorpe. Mr. Thorpe's accomplishments both before and after the Second World War are extremely impressive, and I admire his modesty, and personally, it's not an easy task following his remarks, so thank you. To all the students out there, congratulations. Congratulations to Proctor High School and all the mock trial students. Thank you for being here today. And finally, thank you to all of you. It's great to be able to address such a distinguished group of jurists. It's also an honor to be able to join my law partners, my father, Louis Brindisi, and my sister, Eva Perlman. If you've had a conversation with my father about me over the last few years, he'd probably tell you that he lost a lawyer, but gained an assemblyman, since I'm not in the law office that much these days. So I was hoping that by having lunch with him today, this would count for my service in the law office this week. I'd like to talk to you a little bit about the American Bar Association's theme for Law Day, the Magna Carta, symbol of freedom under the law. As many of you know, this year marks the 800th anniversary of the sealing of the Magna Carta. One of the major principles of this document has always been that no one, no matter how powerful, is above the law. When I think of the Magna Carta, I'm reminded of a story I once heard about three friends: a surgeon, an engineer, and a politician. They were discussing which of their professions was the oldest. The surgeon said Eve was created from Adam's rib, a surgical procedure. The engineer replied, before Adam and Eve, order was created out of chaos. And that was an engineering job. The politician said, yes, but who do you suppose created the chaos? Chaos is certainly a word that could describe England prior to the Magna Carta. You had King John, who appeared to spend all of his days thinking of new ways to terrorize everyone. As a result, under the barons, especially William Marshall, Earl of Pembroke, they dragged John off to a place called Runnymede, where he agreed to sign the Magna Carta. King John had to agree to lay off the church, let people be tried by their peers, and stop grabbing people's property. England, after 1215, moved towards the idea of government operating by law, and Magna Carta established some enduring principles about the limits of the government's power. Like our founding fathers, who borrowed many of the principles of Magna Carta for the Bill of Rights, the barons were practical men, not scholars. However, it's amazing how vital this and other principles found within this document remain today. It is the framework of our modern judicial system, and it has resonated throughout the ages. Just about everything has changed dramatically since the year 1215, but one thing that remains is a desire for freedom under law. The Magna Carta is really the basis for many of the issues I have addressed, and it often is quoted to this day in major Supreme Court opinions that concern civil rights, antitrust matters, and unusual punishment and excessive fines. In his speech to members of the British Parliament in May 2011, President Obama said, "Centuries ago, when kings, emperors, and warlords reigned over much of the world, it was the English who first spelled out the rights and liberties of men in the Magna Carta." The Magna Carta may be 800 years old, but it truly is a living document, and its influence is still widely felt today, especially on this law day. So it is certainly a good time to pause and reflect on all it means to our society. I do want to mention one theme from the Magna Carta as it pertains to New York State government. That is, no one is above the law. This theme is one that played out front and center in New York State over the past year with the arrest and indictment of Sheldon Silver. It has been a difficult year in state government, and it is a very sobering experience to wake up to headlines in the New York Times that the leader of the legislative body you are a part of, the Speaker of the Assembly, has been arrested on bribery charges. January 22nd, the day this news broke, was a somber one in the state capitol. Many people walking the halls of the Capitol building were clearly shaken by the news. Sheldon Silver has been a member of the Assembly for 40 years, and nearly half that time he spent in the position of Speaker of the State Assembly. Mr. Silver had been accused of using his office to obtain nearly $4 million in unlawful payments from 2 law firms over the past 15 years, among other charges. When the news first broke, it was the day after the State of the State. We were preparing to go through our usual dance and begin budget negotiations for an hopefully on-time budget. Obviously, we were sidetracked. At first, many of Silver's loyalists, those members of the Assembly who had been with him for 20 years or more, wanted to circle the wagons and back the Speaker. They were very outspoken in the Democratic conference and wanted to quickly shut down any potential talk of him stepping aside in his role as the Speaker. What they didn't count on was the growing majority of Assembly members who were newer to the Democratic majority conference and didn't share the same loyalties to the former Speaker that they did. In fact, almost half of the Democratic conference, including myself, have been newly elected since 2010. We were the ones that spoke up and said that given the nature of the charges, Mr. Silver could not continue in his role as leader of the Assembly. Obviously, we felt he should be presumed innocent until proven otherwise, but there was too much of a dark cloud over the conference because of the charges against the Speaker. Over the course of the next week, the newer members of the conference stepped up. There were secret meetings, conversations in the halls, and eventually a group of 8 of us held what we thought was a clandestine meeting at an Applebee's outside of Albany to discuss strategy on removing the speaker. I guess if you don't want to be found in Albany, you go to an Applebee's, I guess. As with most clandestine meetings in Albany, someone leaked our meeting to the Wall Street Journal, who later printed an article entitled, "As Silver Dug In, Young Guns Revolted." What eventually came of all of this was we felt empowered. It was, if enough of us stood up and spoke out, we were confident others would follow, and they did. It was a dicey move, especially given previous attempts to remove the speaker. However, within a week, Shelley stepped down, and we elected a new speaker. Perhaps the most reassuring part, looking back now, is that state government continued to function in spite of this unsettling development. For a few weeks, the wheels of government moved a bit slower than usual, but we had a state budget by April 1st, and the important business Assembly members work on continued to perform largely uninterrupted. Carl Hastie was ultimately chosen as the new Speaker. He is the first African American to serve in that position since the body was first created. And I'm pleased that there is a more open atmosphere in Albany. I've been able to talk to Assembly leadership regularly on important issues. They are listening to rank and file members of the Assembly, and some significant changes are taking place to the laws governing public officials and the way the state does business. It is the Magna Carta that ultimately established the concept that no ruler is above the law, a concept that has been on people's minds in Albany and elsewhere this year. Again, I want to thank the Oneida County Bar Association for helping all of us appreciate the importance of the Magna Carta and how 800 years later it is still a major influence on the rights we have as citizens. And I thank all of you for attending this celebration of Law Day and for the work that you do on behalf of your clients. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Assemblyman Brindisi, for all you've done and all you continue to do in this community to bring forth justice for all. This morning, we heard from someone from the Oneida Indian Nation. Her name was Candace Watson. And she discussed also with us the plight of all the different Indian tribes here in Oneida County and the devastation that they suffered for some of the freedoms that we enjoy today. So I think this has been a really enlightening day. I enjoyed very much, and we all enjoyed the students, because you are the lifeline to this community, both the legal and otherwise. And I implore you to consider this legal profession, because ours is a very, very noble profession. You know, we have some good and some bad, but overall it is really a wonderful profession, and it is such a means to obtaining social justice in the world over. So thank you so much for celebrating with us. I hope you have all been uplifted, but also challenged to take the extra step towards making this world a better place. The other person I'd like to recognize, who gets very little recognition for all the work she does, is Miss Diane Davis. She is basically our manager of the Oneida County Bar Association office. Diane, come up and bring Paula with you. Bring Paula with you. cannot do things without you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. We're honored. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, to Oneida County Bar Association President, Mr. Joseph Geruzzi, for all he's done. He's had a very good year, and we thank him very much for his hard work. Men, you get flowers, okay? Thank you. Thank you so much, and we look forward to seeing you next year, but make every day Lord Day. Thank you.